You're listening to the Business Mike podcast. Amazing interviews with entrepreneurs and industry thought leaders.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business Mike podcast. And joining me today is Nicolas. And Nicolas, can you let the listeners and viewers know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, how's it going, firstly, and thank you so much for the invite. It's a real privilege to share this time with you. I am a customer experience consultant. I've had quite a colorful past. I started out as a tech journalist many moons ago, and sort of weaved my way in and out of the corporate world until I found myself in a customer experience role where I am now. I live in South Africa, in Johannesburg. I consult to some financial services companies at the moment. I've worked in the video entertainment industry as well. And in my spare time, I do Shotokan karate. Currently a first Q brown belt. I love riding my motorcycle on weekends, and a little bit of a gamer as well. So that is me in a nutshell.
All right. And you mentioned that you're doing something else before you got into customer experience. So what was that transition like before you found your feet firmly placed in the customer experience world? How did you transition to that?
Well, so, as I mentioned, I'm actually a journalist by trade. I studied journalism in university, and I spent the first sort of 8-9 years of my career as a tech journalist. My sort of curious mind and my pursuit of the truth and perspective all led me down a path that sort of started with getting into customer insights and sort of applying a bit of an analytical mind to customer data. So I started working for a satellite company. I'm sure you've heard of them, MultiChoice, the biggest satellite company in Africa that owns DSTV. So I spent a good sort of 10, 11 years at that organization. At the time, and it's very interesting, at the time I was doing a lot of customer experience related stuff, but it was never formally labeled customer experience. And I think, customer experience is relatively new in the corporate world. The concept of customer experience is not new. That dates back many, many decades. But customer experience as a discipline is only really sort of starting to find its feet in the corporate world. And I think even today, where customer experience is a buzzword and being spoken about ad nauseum in a whole bunch of corporate and business organizations, there's still a sense of, what is customer experience? But to come back to your question, I worked closely with call centers. I worked closely with design teams. I worked closely with UX teams. I was part of the teams that helped develop DSTV services like Catch Up and Box Office. I was also on one of the teams that was quite integral in the development of the first DSTV Explorer decoder. And I always find myself doing things that were sort of customer experience focused, writing scripts for call centers, working with as a design teams to write copy, UX copywriting, etc. And that sort of naturally flowed into a sort of a customer insight space where I started focusing a lot on feedback. What are our customers telling us about these products? What are our customers telling us they want more of? What are they telling us they want less of? What are we doing really well? What do we need to do more of? And that sort of matured into a more formalized customer experience role towards the end of my stint at MultiChoice, where customer experience started being seen as a discipline and something that we need to put a little bit more intention behind and a little bit more investment into. And I learned a lot at MultiChoice, and there's some really great customer experience minds there who used to work there and who currently still work there, which I'm very, very thankful for, the knowledge that they imparted on me. But that is sort of how I weaved my way from journalism to where I am now as a customer experience professional.
Right. As a great fan of MultiChoice and DSCV in particular, there was an era where, despite the dominance, there was so many enhancements and customer experience changes that were being done just to keep at the front and center of getting the customer the best possible experience. And I'm curious because back then, at that point in time, customer experience wasn't necessarily what it is now. So I wanted to appreciate what the culture was at that point in time in the organization. Was it a particular department leading this, or was this a sense of giving the best for the customer spread throughout the organization?
I think, organizations are at various sort of points in their customer experience journey. Customer experience is a journey. It's not something that you just wake up one day and go, right, today we are going to be customer experience. We're going to do customer experience. It's not a tick box. It really is a journey for an organization, and customer experience at MultiChoice. It got buy-in really early. And when I say really early, like when customer experience was still sort of a little bit of an abstract term, talking about feelings and emotions and empathy and, working on making customers feel good about being your customers, etc., without really sort of focusing on the business benefits of customer experience. But there was some good executive buy-in. Even back then, they saw the value that customer experience brought. And I think with MultiChoice being as big and dominant as it is in the market, it ran the risk of becoming complacent, and it ran the risk of I think complacency is a good word. Because there were no sort of really big competitors, and there was nobody who would offer a similar quality of product, even at a better price, there was a danger that MultiChoice could be perceived as being sort of a monopoly, etc. So I think at that stage, there was a concerted effort to make sure that never happened. And customer was put at the center. I remember there was an initiative that was kicked off by a colleague of mine, a very well-known gentleman in the customer experience circles. His name's Clint Payne, who I actually learned a lot from around customer experience. He truly is a CX Sherpa, and anybody's privileged enough to work with the man, you'll see that. He spearheaded a project called Project 99. Where we went into our call centers, we went to our frontline staff, our installers, etc., and we compiled a list of the 99 biggest problems that our customers faced, and we put them up on a wall. And anybody in the organization could go and choose a problem to solve and take it off the wall and go off and solve the problem and come back and mark it as solved. And it was everybody, whether you were a refreshment officer, whether you were a call center agent. The CEO at the time took a few of those cards off the wall as well. And there's some very cool stories about him going out to some of the rural areas and climbing on roofs and installing satellite dishes. It was very, very eye-opening and very enlightening for everybody, no matter which level of the organization you were in. And I think that really drove a sense of ownership and a sense of accountability, that no matter who you are in the organization, no matter what your position is, whether you are customer facing or not, you either have a direct or an indirect influence on the customer experience. And it really opened people's eyes to that. And I think it humbled a lot of people as well. Sometimes you have executives who sit in boardrooms and offices who distance themselves from customers, from the front line, and they really become they really sometimes don't understand the nuances and the the issues that customers and our staff face in trying to resolve those issues. So that really drove a great customer experience culture within the organization, and I think up until the point that I left, and I haven't been there for about 3 years now, but up until the point that I left, there was a massive effort to not only continue the good work that they were doing, but also to progress the organization in their customer experience maturity. The organization was very aware of its customer experience maturity and exactly what it could deliver from a customer experience perspective, but also what it had to do in order to deliver more and deliver better, and really ingrain customer experience as part of the DNA.
All right, it's a wonderful story, and it brought to light a webinar I saw recently on LinkedIn done by the CEO of MTN South Africa, where he would engage the youth in particular about any issues that they have. If they don't have signal somewhere, and I'm sure he had his team on call such that they would address those issues directly to him. And he was speaking their language, he was using some slang, so he could really relate to them. And I think for them, they felt we are getting the communication across because we're talking to the man at the top. So for sure, these issues will get resolved. And I found that very encouraging, as far as listening to the customers is concerned from that point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So from your experience in customer experience, you've been doing this for quite some time. Is there anything that has blown your mind that you've learned over this period of time practicing that maybe you had never fathomed right at the start?
So, this has been a passion project of mine, and it's something that I am pursuing quite enthusiastically. Is what I term return on customer experience, or ROCs, and customer experience professionals tend to have an Achilles heel. And that Achilles heel is usually around return on investment. So customer experience professionals are very good at the great ideas, mapping journeys, insights, culture and adoption, etc. But when it comes to standing in a boardroom in front of the C-suite, your executives, your CEOs, your CFOs, and selling customer experience in terms of dollars and cents. How is what I am proposing to you going to make us money at the end of the day so that you can give us more money to do some of the good things that we're doing? And that is usually where customer experience programs fall apart. And that's usually the sort of source of customer experience projects being disbanded or scaled down, because they can't prove the value to the organization in a dollar and cents terms. So I've been working for probably about a year on building a return on customer experience model, which really does demonstrate to organizations that there is a dollar and cent benefit to making customers feel happy and loyal and retaining customers, driving down cost of acquisition, for example, implementing customer experience initiatives that drive customer lifetime value. If you can get a handle on your costs as an organization, and you can get a really good handle on your data and have really good insights into what are those customer behaviors that generate revenue for the organization, and how do we make those behaviors as pleasurable for customers as possible so they want to do them again and again, that's where the gold is. Customer experience professionals need to speak boardroom better. We're very good at speaking CX. We're very good at speaking empathy and feelings, and we're really good at the abstracts. but we need to get better at speaking dollars and cents to the people who hold the purse strings. So that's a real passion project of mine, and I'm very blessed in my current role as an independent consultant to be able to go into organizations and actually build those models for them. I'm busy doing that at the moment for one of the big banks here in South Africa, and it's really showing some great promise. I have never in my life seen a CFO's eyes light up with stars and sparks and fire before. And when I was delivering this model to one of the executives where I currently am, the light bulb turned on. All of a sudden, for the first time, he was able to see the value of customer experience in real practical terms, because you can't measure emotion. You can't, as a matter of fact, say that this emotion is going to bring you this much money in. But what you can do is say, if customers enjoy doing this thing, which makes us money as well, there is benefit in that and there's value in that. So there's so much more to it, and I'm hoping to write a book about it one day, about the real way of calculating return on customer experience in boardroom terms. So that for me has been my biggest sort of aha moment, or my eureka moment, so to speak. And it's an evolving thing. I don't think we have cracked the nut entirely. It has been an uncrackable nut until now, but I do think we're on the verge of cracking that ROI nut, and I'm very excited about being able to bring that to customer experience professionals worldwide, hopefully. I know you've spoken to a gentleman by the name of Steve Towers in the past, and he's also been quite inspirational in sort of forming that the mentality around customer experience driving return on investment. Specifically, he refers to the the triple crown, which is customer experience initiatives need to improve efficiency, they need to reduce cost, and they need to drive revenue. And those are the important key points. But at the same time, you do need to wrap it in something that customers find pleasurable to do, which is where the real gold is.
Yeah, absolutely. And marketing teams have had a similar challenge in the past, running adverts and having to prove that those campaigns and so on yield a return on investment. So I think CX is at a similar stage now, where they need to turn all these activities and prove that they're worthwhile. And that brings me to my next question, which is a presentation to the boardroom. Like you said, it's usually a challenge, but even let's look at monthly reporting. You're a CX manager and you have your activities that you do, and here you are in the meeting. Well, tell us what happened this month. The presentation of that data sometimes proves to be difficult, because yes, you show people an NPS score, a CSAT, a customer effort score, but what does this mean really? How does it relate to our monthly activities and that kind of thing, even without the bottom line, but just in terms of, are we on track? Do you speak to the other people in the room? And from your experience, how do you get everyone on the same page in that beyond the money, they can understand the language and it makes sense and it ties into everybody else's activities? Because if I'm someone in warehouse, I really don't care about NPS as long as I get my things delivered on time. So getting me to care about you sometimes is a challenge.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think I think organizations get a bit too fixated on those metrics. What is the NPS doing? What is the CSAT doing? What is our net effort score on this process, etc.? And sometimes they become so obsessed with these metrics and the analysis paralysis that comes with that they completely miss the reason for these measures being in place in the first place. They chase the metric, not what the metric is enabling. And we see that. We see organizations that budget against NPS scores. We see organizations that set targets for NPS scores and CSAT without even knowing what they're targeting against and what that information is being used for. So when it comes to customer insights, the first thing for me is, well, what are you doing with that information? And how is that information helping you get to those pleasurable experiences that customers, or those pleasurable behaviors that we expect customers to do that ultimately make us money? It really is a tricky situation, especially when you've got an organization that is so invested in a metric like NPS, for example. So what I like to do, and it sounds simple, and unfortunately sometimes the simplest answer is the right answer, is getting your executives and getting your managers as close to the feedback as possible. So instead of showing them a score, listen, a score is great, but it should never be used as a tool to prioritize work. The score should just be telling you, are you on the right track? It should be as a dipstick to say, are we doing the right things? Yes, we are, right, and we carry on. Or are we doing the right things? No, we need to change those things. I like to put the feedback right in the faces of executives and managers. So making them listen to calls, showing them actual physical feedback from social media. I love focus groups, and I once worked in an organization that organized what we called a live focus group. So we got a bunch of customers in a room, and we were having a management conference at that time. And part of the management conference was we opened up the room and saw a whole bunch of customers sitting there. And we had a facilitator there who obviously facilitated sort of like a live focus group in front of all these. And these were executives all the way up to CEO level. So it was C-suite. It was top and middle management. And we were there really to discuss strategy and the plans for the next financial year and budgeting, etc. So it was very serious conversations going on. And then we had this focus group going on. And it was raw, and it was uncensored, and the feedback was real. And it actually got to a point where one of the customers around the table said that he had a complaint, and his complaint wasn't being resolved. And he ended up phoning the CEO's office. He managed to get the CEO's desk number somehow. And the PA answered, and the PA said, well, I'm sorry, you can't speak to the CEO, but give me your details and I'll get back to you. And obviously that information never went anywhere. And this customer stood up and said, I don't know who this, and I'm going to redact his name because I don't want to, I don't want to speak on his behalf, but I don't know who this Bob Smith is, but he needs to get his head out of the clouds because he doesn't understand the needs of his customers, etc. And Bob Smith, who was the chief operating officer at the time, stood up in the audience and walked up to the customer and shook his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Bob Smith, and you've just woken me up to something that I've been missing the entire time." So as much as we love metrics like NPS, like CSAT, there is no substitute for the real deal, and making them listen to calls and making them experience that feedback face to face.
Yeah, I love exactly what you said there in terms of experiencing it. Basically, take them to the front lines and they get to see what it's like, what their service is. And I also like to encourage not only the people at the top level, but middle level and everywhere else, when they're using the service. Let's say you have a device, it has a problem. Don't call IT directly, call the landline. You try and go through the process that your customer would, just so you appreciate your service, because you then also discover a few shortcomings within the service delivery that you can fix. Yeah,
absolutely.
So if we're to project maybe 10 years down the line or even further along, with the developments in customer experience right now, what do you think the future will look like in this particular landscape?
Whew, wow, that's a question. Listen, I'm a very conservative person when it comes to making predictions about the future, because I mean, it's in my nature. So I know a lot of people are going to jump on the AI bandwagon, and they're going to jump on the neural, the neural learning and the technology bandwagon. And yes, those things are here. And they will mature, and they will get better, and they will eventually be assisting us in many sort of meaningful ways. If I were to sort of, and I want to hook onto AI a little bit, because people don't know what to make of AI. Some people are scared of AI because they think it's going to take their jobs. Some people just don't understand what AI is capable of. They play around a little bit with ChatGPT and don't really get the results that they hope for. So, then they probably just leave it and not understanding how to use, the GPT engine properly, etc. I think that technology is going to, it's going to augment our jobs, and it's going to make our jobs a lot easier, but it's not going to replace us. And from a customer experience perspective, I think it's going to be a gold mine. Not in using AI to replace frontline agents, because there will never be a replacement for empathy, and for that human contact and being able to speak to a human being. As good as some AI is, I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of those videos of the Google AI making restaurant reservations or ordering takeout from the local Chinese restaurants. That's all very good. But and especially when it comes to high empathy jobs, when it comes to emotionally charged jobs, you're still going to need humans in those jobs. Where I think customer experiences is going to take a turn in the next sort of 5 to 10 years is the integration of AI to help make decisions faster, or to give advice faster. So an example would be where and I'll use a call center as an example. If a customer phones a call center and is speaking to an agent on the phone, and is asking a whole bunch of questions and making a whole bunch of queries, that the agent might have to do lookups on some kind of intranet or some kind of database or knowledge base to get the information for the customer, there'll be an AI listening, picking up keywords, picking up phrases, etc. And as the customer is talking, this information is proactively being lifted up to the agent. So the agent can immediately access this information, instead of spending the time searching and looking for the information, use that time to have meaningful human conversations with the customer. So because all that information is already being sort of fed to them. So if anything, I think that's where we have a real opportunity to augment what the humanness of customer experience with technology. I know there are some organizations that are already sort of starting to look at incorporating AI into their tools. Some of the big software vendors are already selling AI tools, etc. I think if organizations are going to survive the customer experience revolution and not fall behind, they need to embrace those technologies, but they need to embrace them in meaningful ways. And the example I've just spoken about is a very meaningful way of freeing agents up, letting agents be less robotic and more empathetic, being able to actively listen better to customers, have meaningful conversations, especially in those interactions that do require a little bit more attention, a little bit more empathy.
Yeah, I agree. And in many cases, people usually make the argument for AI helping the business side of it in terms of the agents, like you've explained. But the reverse is also true. Customers as well will have an AI on their side assisting them to place a query and things like that. So I believe technology is going to definitely drive this. And also customers are going to get a lot smarter. By the time someone calls you, the amount of information they have about your product, your service, your competition, it's really high. So you need to know your stuff whilst dealing with them. This wall between what's happening inside and outside, it's blurring slowly. And so that might be a challenge for organizations that don't have their best foot forward.
Absolutely, and I think a positive byproduct of what you've just spoken about is that all of a sudden it gives organizations the ability to hyper-personalize their services and products. So instead of having a one-size-fits-all approach for everybody, or a trying to be everything to everybody approach, we know exactly who Nick is. We know exactly what his musical taste is. We know exactly where he shops and what he spends his money on. So let's surface those experiences and those products and services that would be meaningful to Nick, the individual, or to Dadi, the individual. Hyper-personalization, I think, is going to be a critical move for a customer experience move for organizations. And I think leveraging technologies like AI will just make that so much easier and so much more relevant.
Right. Just before we wind down the interview, I would like you to share with the listeners and viewers, especially those in the C-suite and management position or business owner, what parting shot would you share with them with regards to customer experience in general?
I think don't write off customer experience because you don't understand it. And I think that would be my advice to sort of top level executives. There's do that at your peril, because customer experience really can add value and does add value to your organization. And if you surround yourself with customer experience people who understand the return on investment aspects of customer experience, I think you'll be on a good path as well. But you need to understand your maturity, how mature you and your organization are on your customer experience journey. Don't expect to make sense of customer experience if you're only starting your journey. Partner with somebody who really understands what it means to take you on that journey and the steps that you need to take to mature your customer experience to a point that it actually does start bringing value to the organization. And then to my fellow customer experience professionals, make it more practical. Yes, we can talk about the soft stuff like emotions and empathy, etc., and that's all so very important. But they are not the thing that makes customer experience relevant to business. You need to speak better boardroom. You need to understand how to calculate the return on your customer experience, and you need to be able to communicate that in dollar and cents terms to the board and to the C-suite, so that you can get more money and more investment to put into your customer experience initiatives and roll out those things that you really want to do. Prove the value up front. And if you can do that, if you can crack that nut, I think you're in an incredibly good place.
Right. Just before I let you go, Nicolas, how can people connect and find you on the internet?
Well, LinkedIn is probably a good place to start. I mean, that's where you found me. So yeah, you can just search for me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you might share a link to my profile in the synopsis or in the comments of this podcast. I do run a little website called CX Life. Yes, pun intended. Life's too short for a bad CX life. And that's cxlife.co.za. And my profile is there. Some of my thoughts are there as well. All my contact information is there as well. So if anybody wants to reach out, if you just want to talk CX, if you have any interesting problems that need solving, I'm all ears. I'm all about building circles of influence and circles of trust. So I'd love to be part of yours.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of the interview. Nicolas, thank you so much. I'm personally very excited about the model that you spoke about. So hopefully you'll be able to publish a book and share it with all the CX experts around the world. We wish you the very best. And thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.